Hello. My name is Harrison Mayuku, and you are welcome to Story World. Amelia had always been the perfect student. At 18, she was the pride of her parents, destined for a bright future. Her grades were impeccable, her record spotless, and her dreams boundless. But in the secret corners of her mind, she harbored a secret that threatened to unravel everything she had worked for. A few months back, a brief, ill-advised fling with a boy she thought she loved had left her with a burden she never imagined she would have to carry. She was pregnant, and the fear of her parents' disappointment, the shame it would bring, paralyzed her. Terrified and alone, Amelia turned to her best friend, Lily. Lily was everything she wasn't: rebellious, bold, and unafraid to challenge the rules. Amelia had always admired Lily's fearless nature, and now, more than ever, she needed that courage. When she finally confessed her predicament to Lily, tears streaming down her face, Lily listened quietly, her brow furrowed in thought. "You don't have to go through this alone," Lily said, placing a comforting hand on Amelia's trembling shoulder. "We'll figure it out. But if you don't want anyone to know, you'll have to make some tough decisions." Amelia nodded, barely able to speak through her sobs. She was desperate, terrified of what would happen if her parents found out, if their whole town knew. "I can't have this baby," she whispered. "I can't let them find out." Lily hesitated before proposing a plan. It was unthinkable, yet in their desperation, it seemed like the only way out. What if you had the baby, but no one ever knew? We could find a place to leave it, somewhere safe, where someone else could find it. That way, no one would ever know. Amelia recoiled at the suggestion. The very thought of abandoning her child horrified her. But as the days passed, and the reality of her situation grew more pressing, the plan began to seem like the only option. The fear of her parents' wrath, of the shame and the gossip that would follow, was too much to bear. So, she agreed. It felt like she was signing away a part of her soul, but Amelia saw no other way. The plan was set in motion. Lily helped her through the remaining months, sneaking her food and supplies, covering for her when she missed school due to morning sickness. They both lived a double life, one filled with secrets and lies. Finally, the day arrived. Amelia went into labor, and with Lily by her side, they drove to a secluded motel on the edge of town. The room was small, dingy, and far from the sterile hospital environment Amelia had imagined giving birth in. The labor was long and painful, and Amelia felt like she was being ripped apart, not just physically, but emotionally as well. When it was over, she held a tiny, perfect baby girl in her arms. For a moment, all of her fears vanished. The world outside ceased to exist, and there was only her and this beautiful, innocent life she had brought into the world. But the moment was fleeting. The harsh reality of what she had agreed to do came crashing down around her. She had no choice. She couldn't keep her. Lily packed up the few belongings they had brought, her face a mask of determination. She could see the turmoil in Amelia's eyes, the silent battle raging within her. "It's time," she said softly, but firmly. The drive to the woods was silent, the air thick with unspoken words and unacknowledged pain. They found a remote area, far from any trails or roads, a place where they were certain no one would find them. Amelia could barely see through her tears as she laid her baby down in a small bed of leaves and branches. She placed a soft kiss on the baby's forehead, whispering a tearful goodbye. "Come on," Lily urged, pulling Amelia back to the car. "We have to go. Now." Amelia forced herself to walk away, her heart breaking with each step. She could hear the faint whimpers of her baby as they drove off, and the sound haunted her for days afterward. Back at home, Amelia tried to return to normal life, but she was a shell of her former self. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her daughter's face, heard her cries, and felt the crushing weight of what she had done. Meanwhile, Lily couldn't shake the image of the baby lying alone in the woods. She had convinced herself that they were doing the right thing, but now that it was done, she couldn't live with the idea that the baby might not survive. Late that night, after she was sure Amelia was asleep, Lily snuck out of her house. She drove back to the woods, her heart pounding with fear and regret. When she reached the spot where they had left the baby, she was relieved to find her still there, alive but weak. Without hesitation, Lily scooped her up, wrapping her in her jacket. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. Lily knew she couldn't keep the baby herself. She was just a teenager, and her own home life was unstable. But she couldn't abandon her either. After a moment of frantic thought, she decided to drive to Jenna's house. Jenna was an old friend from the neighboring town, a woman who had been trying to have a child for years without success. When Lily arrived at Jenna's door in the middle of the night, holding the tiny bundle, she didn't have to say much. Jenna understood instantly. Jenna and her husband welcomed the baby into their home, naming her Grace. They promised to love her and raise her as their own. Lily made them swear never to tell anyone where Grace had come from, and they agreed, understanding the gravity of the situation. Back in town, Amelia tried to move on, burying the memories of that night deep within her. She threw herself into her studies, desperately trying to rebuild her life. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the feeling that something was missing, that a part of her had been left behind in those woods, years past. Amelia graduated with honors, went to college, and eventually became a successful lawyer. She never told anyone about the baby, not even her closest friends or future partners. It was a secret she carried alone, a burden that never fully lifted. Then, one day, a high school reunion brought her back to her hometown. Amelia hadn't been back in years, and the memories came flooding back as she drove through their familiar streets. She ran into old classmates, exchanged pleasantries, and tried to avoid any deep conversations. That's when she saw her, a little girl with striking blue eyes playing near the edge of the park where the reunion was being held. The girl's eyes were the exact same shade as Amelia's, a rare blue that ran in her family. A chill ran down her spine as she stared at the child, a sense of recognition tugging at her heart. Before she could stop herself, Amelia walked over to the girl. "Hi there," she said, her voice trembling. "What's your name?" The girl looked up at her, smiling. "Grace," she said brightly. "My name's Grace." The name hit Amelia like a punch to the gut. She struggled to keep her composure, her mind racing. Who are your parents?" she managed to ask. Before Grace could answer, a woman approached, calling her name. Amelia turned to see Jenna, now older, but unmistakably the same woman she had known years ago. Jenna gave her a warm smile, completely unaware of the storm raging inside Amelia. "Oh, Amelia. I didn't expect to see you here," Jenna said, hugging her. "This is my daughter, Grace." Amelia felt her world tilt. She barely managed to keep the conversation going, her mind stuck on the realization that this was her daughter, the baby she had left behind. Grace was alive, and more than that, she was happy. Jenna and her husband had given her a good life, a life Amelia could never have provided. That night, Amelia confronted Lily, demanding to know the truth. Lily broke down, confessing everything. She told Amelia how she had gone back that night, unable to leave the baby to die. She explained how she had given Grace to Jenna, knowing she could never reveal the truth to Amelia. Amelia was overwhelmed with a whirlwind of emotions, relief that her daughter was alive, anger at Lily for keeping it from her, and guilt for what she had tried to do. But more than anything, she felt a deep, aching sadness for the years she had lost with Grace. Amelia didn't know how to move forward. She wanted to be a part of Grace's life, but she couldn't bring herself to disrupt the happy family Jenna had built. She realized she had no right to step in after all this time. So she made a difficult decision. She would stay away, allowing Grace to continue her life with Jenna, while Amelia watched from afar. In the years that followed, Amelia stayed in touch with Lily, who kept her updated on Grace's life. She also formed a quiet friendship with Jenna, sending gifts to Grace on birthdays and holidays, always anonymously. It wasn't the relationship she had hoped for, but it was all she could offer. When Grace was old enough, Jenna told her the truth about her birth. Grace was shocked, but she was also grateful for the life she had been given. She sought out Amelia, not as a mother, but as a friend. They began to form a connection, a bond based on understanding, and Amelia and Grace started meeting occasionally, each encounter more comfortable than the last. Amelia couldn't help but marvel at how Grace had grown into such a kind, intelligent young woman. Grace, on the other hand, was drawn to Amelia, sensing an unspoken connection between them. Though neither spoke of the truth that bound them, it hung in the air, a silent understanding. One day, after one of their meetings, Grace began asking questions that Amelia had long feared. "Amelia, do you ever wonder what it would have been like if you had a daughter? Someone who was yours?" The question struck a nerve. Amelia hesitated, her heart pounding. "I think about it all the time," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think she would have turned out like me?" Grace's eyes searched Amelia's face, as if seeking an answer she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. "Grace, I think you're perfect just the way you are. And if I had a daughter, I could only hope she'd be as wonderful as you." Grace smiled, but Amelia could see the wheels turning in her mind. She wondered how much longer they could keep the truth hidden. As time went on, Grace's curiosity grew. She began asking Jenna more about her early childhood, her birth, and the circumstances that brought her to their family. Jenna, feeling the weight of the secret she had kept for so long, decided it was time to tell Grace the whole truth. One evening, Jenna sat Grace down and told her everything, about Lily's late-night visit, the baby left in the woods, and Amelia's role in the whole ordeal. Grace listened in stunned silence, her world shifting with each word. When Jenna finished, Grace felt a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, but also a strange sense of relief. She now understood the connection she had always felt with Amelia, and why she had been drawn to her. That night, Grace confronted Amelia. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice trembling with emotion. "All this time, I thought you were just a friend, but you're my mother." Amelia was taken aback, guilt flooding her. She had known this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared for the intensity of it. "I wanted to, Grace. I did. But I didn't want to disrupt the life Jenna and her husband gave you. I thought it was best to keep my distance, to let you live the life they had built for you." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "But I needed to know. I needed to know who I really am." Amelia reached out to her, but Grace pulled away, hurt and confusion evident in her expression. "I'm sorry, Grace. I thought I was doing what was best for you, but I see now that I was wrong. You deserve to know the truth, and I should have told you." Grace's anger softened as she saw the regret in Amelia's eyes. "I don't know what to feel, Amelia. Part of me is angry, but another part of me is just lost." "I know," Amelia said softly. "And I'm here for you, whatever you need. I just hope you can forgive me someday." The days that followed were difficult for both of them. Grace needed time to process the truth, and Amelia gave her the space she needed. But eventually, Grace reached out, ready to talk. They spent hours together, discussing everything: Grace's childhood, Amelia's decisions, and what the future might hold for them. In the end, Grace forgave Amelia. She understood the fear and desperation that had driven her to make those choices, and she saw the genuine love that Amelia had for her. Their relationship was complicated, but it was also filled with the potential for healing and growth. As they continued to rebuild their bond, Amelia found herself slowly letting go of the guilt that had haunted her for so long. She began to see Grace not just as the daughter she had lost, but as the young woman she had found. And in doing so, she found a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Grace, too, found herself navigating the complexities of her identity. She had two mothers now, one who had raised her and one who had given her life. It was a lot to process, but with time, she began to see it as a unique blessing rather than a burden. The story of Amelia, Grace, Lily, and Jenna didn't end with that revelation. It was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with challenges, but also with the promise of deeper understanding and love. As they faced the future together, they knew that their past would always be a part of them. But they also knew that they had the power to shape TV what came next, to build a new story that honored the journey they had taken together. Moral of this story: if you do bad, it will come back to you. If you do good, it will come back to you. So stay away from sin. Thank you.